I'm sorry, I didn't see you there." As soon as I stepped into the hallway of the store, I bumped into a woman coming out of the restroom. I quickly apologized and stepped aside. "Oh, no. It was my fault as well. Are you hurt?" "Could it be David?" Surprised to hear my name, I looked up to find a person who had been a bitter memory from my high school days. Even though her appearance had changed with makeup and clothes, there was no mistaking her. It was Sarah. Next to her stood a man I also recognized. Like Sarah, he was a classmate from school, Tyler. From the looks of it, they seemed to be still together. "It's David, isn't it? What brings you here?" "What am I doing here?" I felt like retorting, but the bitter memories from my school days held me back. I was about to excuse myself, claiming another engagement, when Sarah blocked my path. A high-end place like this doesn't seem to suit someone who didn't graduate high school, does it? "Oh, I see. Are you on the janitorial staff or something? If that's the case, you shouldn't be out here. You should be behind the scenes." I wanted to respond, but in that moment, I found myself at a loss for words. Then, the owner's announcement came over the speaker system. "To all our esteemed guests dining with us, please direct your attention to the stage for a moment. To enhance your evening, we're pleased to present a special performance." The next moment, the name announced by the owner elicited a look of sheer astonishment on their faces. That day marked a pivotal change in the lives of all three of us. I am David. My father is an orchestra conductor. My mother, a violinist in that very orchestra. Being the son of musicians, I was immersed in music from an early age. They envisioned me, their only child, following in their footsteps, and thus I began piano lessons at the age of 2. Before I fully grasped it, my life was entwined with the piano, and I aspired to become a pianist, committing myself to diligent practice. Owing to an early start, I garnered awards at various competitions as a child. The triumphs were gratifying, not solely for making my parents proud, but because the recognition of my progress brought me genuine happiness, and it spurred me to delve further into piano after starting grade school. My academic life was inextricably linked with the piano. To say it nurtured me would be an understatement. I cherished the piano that deeply. Even throughout high school, my existence orbited around the piano. With no obligation to join a club at my school, I refrained from doing so, opting instead to spend my breaks and post-school hours in the music room, practicing alone by permission. Then, a significant moment arose. That day, as was routine, I found solace in the piano keys within the music room. Upon concluding the final note and retracting my fingers from the keys, an unexpected round of applause resonated. Believing I was solitary, the sudden acclamation took me by surprise, and upon lifting my gaze, I was rendered speechless. At the doorway of the music room stood a girl, her eyes so brilliantly sparkling, it was as though she embodied the light itself, exquisite and ethereal. Her long lashes accentuated her white eyes, and her defined features were striking, even bare of makeup. Her lustrous black hair cascaded down to her waist, forming a radiant halo in the sunlight filtering through the window. With a petite visage and elongated, graceful limbs, she resembled a model directly lifted from the pages of a fashion publication. I know that song. It's my favorite things. I was startled when a female student, who had approached me without my noticing, spoke to me from close range. I realized she had been watching. I was practicing Chopin for a competition, but to avoid becoming overly tense, I would sometimes play my favorite pieces to maintain a sense of enjoyment. Today, I felt like playing some movie music and had just finished playing my favorite things from the musical The Sound of Music. "You're really good at piano. That was so cool." She praised me with such sincerity that I was momentarily speechless, unable to simply say I was taking a break. "No, this was just for fun," I managed to say, attempting to downplay the performance. However, she persisted. "Not at all. It's clear you love the piano. Can I listen more?" Her eyes sparkled with such enthusiasm that I couldn't refuse. From that day forward, she often came to the music room after school to hear me play. Her name was Sarah. Sarah appreciated not only popular tunes like My Favorite Things, but also listened intently to whatever I played, including pieces for my competitions. The reason I played at school, even though I had a piano at home, was in large part due to her company. At home, I was always under the critical ear of my professional musician parents, and my piano lessons were invariably strict. But with Sarah, who simply enjoyed my music, the time spent became a haven unlike any I had known. Eventually, our after-school sessions in the music room felt incredibly natural. One day, during one of these musical interludes, Sarah appeared unusually anxious as she listened to me play. Sensing something was amiss, and as I began to recognize that my fondness for Sarah was blossoming into something deeper, I wondered how I could offer comfort or what to say next, my fingers lingering on the keys. The tension was palpable in the silence. Just as I was about to speak up, "David," Sarah spoke up a beat faster than I could. Our eyes locked. Sarah's large eyes were trembling. This was the moment. Swallowing hard, I lifted my fingers from the keys and turned to face Sarah directly. Her lips moved. The first time I heard my favorite things here, I felt a spark. David's piano playing, the way you talk, the time we spent together. Sarah's eyes, blinking slowly, seemed determined, looking at me firmly. "I've loved you for so long. Will you go out with me?" My body temperature soared. My heartbeat accelerated to 1.5 times its normal rate. It wasn't just me. Overwhelmed with joy that Sarah felt the same, I took a deep breath and responded, "I've loved you for so long too. Please, be with me." My voice trembled embarrassingly, but seeing Sarah's eyes light up more than ever before filled me with warmth from the depths of my heart. Our relationship didn't alter our routine. We continued to spend our time together in the music room just as we had before. Although we wanted to go out, Sarah understood my schedule was filled with competitions and quietly supported our music room rendezvous. Meanwhile, Tyler, the top student in our grade, started harassing me for reasons unknown. Can't study, no friends, and now tricking Sarah. An introvert obsessed with the piano isn't the right choice for Sarah. I can make Sarah 100 times happier than you could with your uncertain pianist career. Each time, Sarah would quickly come to my defense and confront Tyler. I wasn't particularly troubled by his remarks. The critiques from my parents and piano teacher were far more daunting. Yet, I felt a sense of inadequacy having Sarah step in on my behalf. Sarah and Tyler have been friends since childhood. Tyler hails from a family of doctors, and he's been diligently focusing on his studies with the goal of becoming one himself. This clarified why he frequently discussed academic achievements and the importance of a stable future. It all came together now. Sure, he can be a bit annoying at times, but he's a good guy. We've been close family friends forever, so I know him pretty well," Sarah said with a laugh, seeming more like an older sister than usual. Months into our relationship, despite being too busy with piano practice to go on proper dates, I still felt incredibly happy with our time together in the music room. Before we knew it, the seasons changed. Summer passed, autumn arrived, and then it was winter. While we continued our music room dates, I was slightly concerned that Sarah started missing school more frequently. "Just going through some stuff. I'm fine, really," Sarah said with a laugh. I should have looked deeper into her words much sooner. Then, one winter day, I was suddenly called to the staff room during class. My test scores were fine, and I had already reported my competition results. Wondering what it could be about, I entered the staff room only to be told, "Please, sit down and listen," as a phone receiver was handed to me. A bad feeling washed over me. My hand trembled as I took the receiver. "Hello, is this David?" The caller was a doctor from the hospital, a family friend I've known since childhood. "Your parents have been in a traffic accident. They're in critical condition, unconscious." The flood of information was beyond my comprehension. My parents had been in Alaska for a concert until yesterday. They were supposed to return today. An accident. A teacher ushered me into a car, and before I knew it, we had arrived at the hospital. Our destination was the morgue. Both of them were already gone. I couldn't process my emotions, and in a blur, the wake and funeral were arranged and concluded before I realized it. I didn't even have time to grieve. Now, without my parents, I was left with a vague sense of uncertainty about how to live my life, swirling endlessly in my mind. A few days later, I returned to high school, not wanting to worry anyone, but I couldn't snap back into my usual routine and spent about a week in a daze. Already in a precarious financial situation, I knew all too well that continuing down the costly path of music was becoming increasingly difficult, unable to focus on either my studies or the piano. Though I hadn't practiced for competitions in a while, I decided to visit the music room after a long absence. I wanted to play the piano to sort out my feelings. It's been a while. As I opened the door, I was greeted by Sarah sitting in front of the piano. "Sarah, you came to play the piano, didn't you?" Sarah gestured for me to take a seat on the piano bench. As soon as I sat down, my arms felt incredibly heavy. I barely managed to place my fingers on the keys. Yet, knowing Sarah was listening, I played my favorite things at about 3/4 of my usual tempo with my heavy fingers. After finishing the song slowly, a chill ran through my fingertips. That's when I realized my life as a musician was over. Waiting for Sarah's delayed applause to end, I turned to face her. "Sarah, there's something I need to discuss." Sarah kept her eyes averted, silently waiting for what I had to say. Taking a shallow breath and forcing a strained smile, I announced my decision. "I've decided to give up on my dream of becoming a pianist and start working due to my family's situation. I'm sorry to disappoint you after all your support, but I promise I'll do my best in my own way." Sarah remained silent for what felt like an eternity. Then, in a soft voice, she simply said, "I see," and slowly left the room. In the days that followed, I went to the music room but never saw Sarah again. Without touching the piano, I would just sit and stare at the keys until night fell. That day was no different as I sat motionless on the piano bench. Suddenly, the music room door opened, and when I looked up, it was Sarah. "Sarah, it's been a while." It has been a while. Sarah's expression was unreadable. Had she always been so inscrutable? As she moved to the other side of the piano and closed her eyes for a moment, she spoke quietly. "David, we need to break up." In that moment, time seemed to freeze. The only sound was the pounding of my heartbeat in my ears. "Break up? I'm sorry. I dated you thinking you'd become a famous pianist. I never imagined you were too poor to continue with music. I want a simpler life. So, let's break up," she said. I was at a loss. Weren't we in love? Sure, we couldn't have typical student dates, and I never could afford to give Sarah gifts. But now that I had quit piano, I could take her anywhere. Once I started working, I could buy her anything. I just needed her to wait. I poured out my feelings to Sarah, but she never once looked at me. "Sarah, please. I haven't been able to do anything for you yet. I don't want to break up. Aren't you done yet?" Turning towards the voice, I saw Tyler entering through the music room's door, left ajar. Sarah ran to Tyler, and unbelievably, they held hands like a couple. "I've decided to date Tyler. Being a doctor's wife seems the most stable life after all. You can't provide for Sarah being poor, can you? Just give up already. Work hard at whatever job you get. That's all," they said dismissively, arm in arm, and left the music room without looking back. That's right. My future is bleak. No parents, can't even play the piano properly. Everything else seemed meaningless. I immediately submitted my withdrawal from high school. Ignoring the teacher's attempts to persuade me, I left, filled with emptiness, and started working at a local company willing to hire someone with my education. Though it was tough, I worked while mourning the loss of my loving parents and a girlfriend who loved me for who I was, not just for my piano. Due to becoming impoverished, I had to sell the beloved piano I had at home, and for a long time, I worked as if I were dead, unable to play the piano. Due to an accident, the usual train line was suspended, so on my way home via an unfamiliar route, I heard the sound of a piano coming from inside a building at the station where I transferred. Following the sound, I found a small but well-made piano. "Street piano available. Anyone is welcome to play." Watching a young child play clumsily but joyfully from a bench, I was reminded of my own childhood. I hadn't told my parents I quit piano. I quit so suddenly, I never got to say goodbye to my piano teacher either. I wonder how they're doing. I was lost and thought about this. After finishing their performance, the young child ran over to what seemed to be their parent, chatting and holding hands happily as they left. No one else came to play for a while. With some time before the next train, no one else passed by the piano, and I found myself alone on this floor. Staring at the piano, it seemed to sparkle under the light, beckoning me with a "come here" gesture. No one's around. I muttered to myself, almost as an excuse, and slowly moved from the bench. It had been a while since I last played. Sitting at the bench, I tested the feel of the keys. The keys sank softly under my fingers, emitting a perfectly tuned note that filled the floor. As my fingers moved freely, emotions overflowed with the music. The sadness of losing my parents and girlfriend all at once. Anger at the unfairness. Playing the piano allowed me to release all these ugly emotions I'd never been able to express before. Pouring all my feelings into the final note, I realized I was drenched in sweat from playing. Breathing heavily, I lifted my fingers from the keys. Surprised by the sudden applause, I turned to find I was surrounded by people. Embarrassed that so many had heard my raw, emotional performance, I quickly left the scene and boarded the bus home that had just arrived. They had heard me. I have completely forgotten it was a street piano. Yet, contrary to my feelings, my heart felt lighter. By the time I got home, I was glad I had played the piano after so long. Good morning. Hey David. The next day, when I went to work, a coworker, pale as a ghost, rushed over. Look at this, he demanded, thrusting his phone at me. The video on the screen must have turned my face as pale as his. Then, 10 years passed. At 29, I found myself in a high-end French restaurant. This is where the scene with my reunion with Sarah from the beginning takes place. Sarah recognized me and started talking. Tyler was standing by her side. I greeted them and was about to leave when Sarah stopped me to continue talking. You dropped out of high school, so you're a high school graduate, right? Being here means you're a janitor or something, right? Stay out of sight. Sarah was dating Tyler, who had become a doctor, and she mentioned how happy she now was. I wondered what she felt telling me this. Not that I wanted to understand. I wondered what she felt telling me this. Not that I wanted to understand. Ignoring my attempt to leave with the I should be going, the owner of the restaurant started speaking over the microphone, just as Sarah was about to speak further. Following the resentful look of the two as they returned to the hall, I too entered. Today, we have a special guest performing for us. Sarah and Tyler looked at the stage, wondering who it might be. The owner winked at me and began my introduction with a smile. Introducing a globally renowned pianist discovered on social media, David. Surprised, they turned to look at me. As I stepped towards the stage, Sarah remarked, "But didn't you start working after dropping out of high school?" A video of me playing piano went viral after someone posted it online. That's how I returned to the music world. That day at the street piano, someone who had seen my intense performance recorded it and uploaded the video to a sharing site. It spread rapidly across social media and garnered over 10 million views. I was shocked when a coworker showed me the video the next day, saying, "Isn't this you?" Knowing so many people had listened to my playing was incredibly heartwarming. That feeling, knowing people enjoyed my music, made me increasingly eager to play again. And soon, a man appeared, offering to invest in me. Then, a man who wanted to invest in me appeared, the owner of this restaurant. Besides the restaurant, he also ran a music school. "I'll fully support you financially. I fell in love with your music at first sight. Let's aim for the world together." Seeing the genuine sparkle in the owner's eyes, I felt his sincere love for my music. It felt like fate. "Thank you. I look forward to working with you." Thanks to the owner's music school facilities, I could play the piano I loved once again. Not just that, with the owner's help, I, who had only finished high school, graduated from an international music school and became a globally recognized pianist. Let's welcome him to the stage. Our very own genius pianist from Japan, David. After the introduction, the owner called me to the stage. "Well, I've been called up," I said, leaving Sarah and Tyler behind as I walked up. Greeting the owner, who waited with a beaming smile, we shook hands lightly before I took my seat at the piano. Now, the performance begins. The moment I pressed the keys, the atmosphere in the restaurant transformed. It was my time until the end of the set list. After finishing all the pieces and lifting my fingers from the keys, amidst the rising applause, I saw Sarah and Tyler hurriedly leaving the restaurant. A few days after that incident, the doorbell rang unexpectedly during the day. Wondering who it could be since I wasn't expecting anyone, I went to the door to find Tyler standing there. Surprised by his sudden visit, I asked what was going on, and Tyler, almost pleadingly, said, "Please meet with Sarah." Why all of a sudden? She called me poor and broke up with me unilaterally. Why should I meet her? She probably doesn't want to see me either. Sarah is sick. She doesn't have much time left. Tyler interjected, shocking me into silence. As I stood there speechless, Tyler began to explain. Tyler, having been childhood friends with Sarah, had supported her through her frail health since they were young. Sarah was diagnosed with a serious illness back in high school. Around the time her absences increased, Sarah insisted on keeping it a secret from everyone else, but Tyler knew about her condition due to our families being close. "Sarah, you should tell David too. He could support you." "No, David is too kind. I'd just be a burden to him. It's better for him if we break up." She tried to hide her vulnerability, insisting on staying strong. Sarah got better and started coming to school again. But then you stopped showing up. You were at the music room every day, though. You had no idea about Sarah then. I had no idea she was waiting in the music room. Caught up in my own troubles, I hadn't considered my girlfriend's feelings. Then, when you suddenly showed up at school saying you were going to work, Sarah said, "If something serious has happened, all the more reason I shouldn't drag him down." So, she had Tyler make it seem like she hated me to push me away. Tyler also mentioned he knew about the recent performance. "Sarah knew you succeeded as a pianist. She regretted how we parted, but wanted to hear you play one last time before she died." I was shocked and sure of what to say. I had no idea she was feeling that way, torn between wanting to see her and wondering if I should. However, I knew I had to ask this one thing. "But what about you? Aren't you two dating?" After a moment of silence, Tyler grimaced and said, "We're not dating. I'm her attending physician." Before I knew it, I had rushed out of the house. Sarah had been thinking of me, yet I hadn't considered her feelings at all. It's too late for regrets now. Now, I must get to the hospital as quickly as possible. Central Hospital. I've already informed the reception. Hurry up and go. I could hear Tyler shouting from behind. Without looking back, I thanked him and ran faster towards the hospital. Upon arriving and approaching the reception, I was immediately directed to a room without even giving my name. The name on the door read Sarah. With trembling hands, I knocked and entered nervously. Sarah was gazing out the window. She seemed surprised to see me but managed a strained smile and said, "Tyler told you, didn't he?" I was invited to sit on the pipe chair beside her bed, and as I did, Sarah began to speak in bits and pieces. We talked slowly, as if trying to bridge the gap that had formed between us over time. She mentioned finding out about my parents' passing after I had left school. By that time, she had already taken a leave from school to focus on her treatment, and she regretted not being there during my toughest time. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you when you needed someone the most," she said, her voice close to tears. Hearing her apologize, my own regrets surfaced. "I failed to notice your illness, Sarah. I made you out to be the bad one. I'm truly sorry." From then on, I visited Sarah's hospital every day. I talked about the recent pieces I was working on, brought CDs of my performances to listen to together, and just spent time with her. Sarah always smiled, but as she grew thinner and breathing seemed more labored, it was hard to see her like that. Yet, I didn't want to waste a moment of the time we had left. One day, in a weak voice, she asked me to play that song again. That song, the one I played the first time she spoke to me back in high school. My favorite things. "Sure. I think this hospital has a piano space. I'll ask Tyler if we can use it." We managed to move her bed to a private space where I could play the piano just for us. It reminds me of the music room in high school. She had always listened quietly to my playing back then. Whenever I played, she always listened with a smile. "Thank you, David. Your playing is truly my favorite thing in the world." That was the last time I played piano for her. The next day, she never regained consciousness and passed away after 2 more days, fighting bravely. The days following Sarah's passing were a whirlwind of wake and funeral preparations. I pleaded with her parents to let me be involved in everything as a way to make amends, or more so because I wanted to be with her till the very end. After everything was over and everyone had returned to their lives, I was left alone, looking back at them, then standing in front of her grave. "Sarah, you did well. Rest easy now. You rest too. Turning around at the sound of a voice, I saw Tyler standing there. Aren't you going home yet? What about you, Tyler? Tyler mentioned he had slipped away from his hospital duties for a moment. Standing next to Tyler in front of Sarah's grave, he slowly rose from the pipe chair. I've disliked you from the start, Tyler said, almost grudgingly. Tyler said, almost grudgingly. Since I was little, I've taken care of Sarah, who was always frail. I always thought I'd be the one to look after her. Then you suddenly showed up, acting like her boyfriend. Tyler didn't look at me, but his sincerity came through. Well, I was her boyfriend, I responded, to which he replied, that's why I disliked you. But I couldn't make Sarah truly happy. Only you could. Seeing her smile return when she was with you at the end, I'm grateful for that. That's all, he said, walking away, but his profile seemed softer than before. Sarah, me, and Tyler too. I guess we all struggled to express our feelings, thinking of each other. It's probably because we were able to speak our truths, even if it meant risking hurt, that we understood each other in the end. Feeling profoundly thankful for Tyler, who gave us this chance to be honest. Feeling profoundly thankful for Tyler, who gave us this chance to be honest, I whispered thank you as I watched his figure shrink into the distance.